Good day, everyone. To proceed the discussion, we will going to discuss globalization and its ethical challenges. So, for my part, I'll be tackling about globalization. So, what is globalization? According to my research, globalization is the exchange of ideas, capital, and goods across the world, driven by technology, whether the technology is ships or the internet. So globalization is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, culture, and populations brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. So it is like sharing their culture, sharing their information across the world. So it may affect the country's economy and its people. There is a study it began when Europeans in 1400 set sail across the Atlantic looking for shorter spice routes to China and India. So many mark the voyages of Christopher Columbus and other seafaring captains for opening the commercial trade routes across the world and beginning of globalization. So for today, changes in technology and international economic policies have reduced many barriers to the free flow of goods, services, and capital. So transports and communications costs have significantly dropped. At the same time, have also been reductions in tariffs. So it has leads to an overall increase in international economic activity. So for today, because of the help of internet connections, it's easy for entrepreneurs or the businessmen to communicate well globally. So for example, is the products of like for example gadgets. So a cell phone, the parts of the cell phone from for example from Japan, the chips, the in Germany, and it built in China. So the one product it processed in different countries. So that is the way that globalization for now is easy because we used many technologies like ships, airplanes, many kinds of transportations, and for communications it's easy because we use internet connection. So we used gadgets and cell phones to communicate. So for the summary, economic globalization is a historical process driven by the dual forces of innovation and technology. In the most general sense, globalization refers to the increasing integrations of economies around the world. The heightened integrations is the result of the movement of goods, services, and capital across borders in addition to the movement of people and knowledge across international borders. So it is like sharing the products, the cultures, and the information worldwide, not just the same place, but worldwide. So conquering empires throughout history resulted in the sharing of ideas, mixing of cultures and peoples and trades across those conquered lands. So many countries who conquered lands, like example the Spain or here in the Philippines or in America, so different places. So it because of that, we have this kind of globalizations. We are sharing the cultures and the knowledge of everyone globally.
Morning, ma'am. So, I will be discussing the problems that occurs during globalization. But first, let us all know that globalization also has the benefits. So, let me discuss to you first what is the benefits of globalization. So, globalization has benefits that cover many different areas. It reciprocally developed economies all over the world and increased cultural exchanges. It also allowed financial exchanges between companies and changing the paradigm of work. So many people are nowadays citizens of the world. So the origin of goods became secondary and geographic distance is no longer a barrier for many services to happen. So let's dig deeper. So problem occurs since we have this globalization. So now I am discussing to you the negative effects of globalization. So is globalization bad? So this question is for you guys. So you will answer this after my discussion. So you will know the answer after my discussion after the discussion of the negative effects of globalization. So the negative effects of globalization. So we have three: cultural loss, economic, the negative effects on economic, and the negative effects of globalization in our environment. So first, the negative effects of globalization on cultural loss. So, together with economic and financial globalization, there has obviously also been cultural globalization. Indeed, the multiplication of economic and financial exchanges has been followed by an increase in human exchanges such as migration, expatriation, or traveling. So, these human exchanges have contributed to the development of cultural exchanges. So, this means that different customs and habits shared among local communities have been shared among communities that used to have different procedures and even different beliefs. So, apart from all the benefits of globalization has and allowing cultural exchanges, it also homogenized the world's cultures. That's why specific cultural characteristics from some countries are disappearing, from languages to traditions or even specific industries. That's why, according to UNESCO, the mix between the benefits of globalization and the protection of local cultures' uniqueness requires a careful approach. So, for example, situation nowadays is uh, the the effects of uh, Korean cultures in our country. So natakdan ang Philippines. So labi na sa mga millennials sa culture sa mga Koreans like clothing in our language. So millennial nowadays tend to use Korean languages in making conversations with their friends. So that is the example of the negative effects of globalization in our cultural loss. So next is the negative effects of globalization in our economic. So globalization has led to a sharp increase in trade and economic exchanges, but also to a multiplication of financial exchanges. In the 1970s, world economies opened up, and the development of free trade policies accelerated the globalization phenomena between 1950 and 2010. So world exports increased 33-fold. So this significantly contributed to increasing the interactions between different regions of the world. So that is the benefits of globalization in our economic. But despite its benefits, the economic growth driven by globalization has not been done without awakening criticism. The consequences of globalizations are far from homogeneous: income inequalities, disproportional wealth, and trades that benefits parties differently. In the end, one of the criticisms is that some actors, or let's say countries, companies, individuals, benefit more from the phenomena of globalization, while others are sometimes perceived as the losers of globalization. So as a matter of fact, a recent report from Oxfam says that 82% of the world's generated wealth goes to 1% of the population. So that is the negative effect of globalization in our economic. So next, lastly, is the negative effects of globalization in the environment. So far in my research, uh, effects of globalization in the environment are more focusing on the negative effect because it has more negative effects in our environment than positive effects. So many critics have also pointed out that globalization has negative effects on the environment. Thus, the massive development of transport that has been the basis of globalization is also responsible for serious environmental problems such as greenhouse gas emissions, global warming, or air pollution. So, at the same time, global economic growth and industrial productivity are both the driving force and the major consequences of globalization. So we are all aware of that. And they also have big environmental consequences as they contribute to the depletion of natural resources such as deforestation. So when we say deforestation, it refers to the decrease in forest areas across the world that are lost for other uses such as agricultural croplands, urbanization, or mining activities. So because of this, uh, we are all affected, our environment affected because of the decrease of trees. So second is the destruction of our ecosystems. So ecosystems is where we lived or where the animals, trees, that is called ecosystem, and loss of biodiversity. So the worldwide distribution of goods is also creating a big garbage problem, especially on what concerns plastic pollution. So plastic pollution in rivers like that. So we burn plastics. So it will cause also, it will destroy our ecosystems and it will lose biodiversity. So that's all of my report.
So, good afternoon, everyone. And I am Bernadette Foxon, and I'm gonna discuss about globalization and its ethical challenges. So, intrusion of the International Economic Organization on indebted nations. This is one of the challenges, ethical challenges of globalization. You will commonly hear this from countries that are poor or having a financial countries, big countries, or private groups, or this is an advantage to make those smaller countries in debt to them. So whenever they needed something from that particular country, they would just say it and the country will evidently comply because of the incurred debt. So why do we have to pay taxes? People illegally seek harmonious lives for the common good based on their will on a democratic setting like the Philippines, based on the popular will of the people, such as harmonious relationship is achieved if there is an enabling law which governs the populace. Lifeblood doctrine or power of taxation. So power of taxation is one of the three inherent powers of the state. It is a narrow prerogative enshrined in the highest and supreme law of the land. So a great way to achieve government good is through paying taxes. This is policy of taxation is set forth in the Philippines and chiefly stated in the Constitution of the Philippines and 3 enabling the Public Act under Article 6, Section 28 of the 1987 Constitution state that Congress shall evolve a progressive system of taxation. These are the belief that taxes should be based on the individual's ability to pay, known as the ability to pay principle and the benefit principle. The idea that there should be some equivalence between what individuals pays and the benefits he subsequently receives from governmental activities. So why do we have to pay taxes? From the fact that it is considered a crime if we don't pay taxes, intoxication is punishable under the law. We as the inhabitants of the state are obliged to basal taxes are considered the lifeblood of the nation, and without revenue raised from taxation, the government will not survive, resulting in detriment to society. Without taxes, the government will be paralyzed, inactive, and unable to operate.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Lizilan R. Pilayo. Globalization and its ethical challenges. Pluralism, broadly construed, the term pluralism refers to the state of having more than one of anything. In other words, pluralism suggests the coexistence of many things such as nation, groups, opinions, principles, beliefs, and ways of life. At the core of the principle of pluralism is the idea of respect for diversity. In the talk of pluralism, pluralist society necessarily involves a diversity of different ideas or people that must be respected or at least recognized. The principle of pluralism can be applied in a wide range of disciplines and contexts in society, ethics, politics, ethnic relations, and legal form. For examples, if one invokes a pluralist society in which individual or group can pursue its own values and interests, then that person is more or less demanding that each person or groups must be valued, recognized, and included as an equal member of society, regardless of gender, religious, ethnic, or socio-cultural differences. However, the social conclusion of individuals or groups does happen by itself. It should be the result of continued and deliberate choices and action by individuals, civil society, and the government. A pluralist system exists only when a society actively reorients its social, economic, political, and educational system to secure and recognize the equality of every person as a citizen. The moral pluralist also believes that moral issues are extremely complicated and that no single philosophical approach will always provide the answers. For the reason, moral pluralists will always analyze the issues from several moral principles or theories before making decisions and taking actions. In the field of ethics, moral pluralism is the idea that are varying ethical principles and theories and that conflict with each other. Yet each of them is worthy of respect. Hence, a moral pluralist tends to be open-minded when faced with competing ethical views and moral principles. Pluralism is even more needed in religion. In fact, religious differences are some of the major sources of conflict in history and even today. For example, of age-old conflict between Palestine and Israel and Christianity and Islam. Pluralism in religion refers to the state of being where people in religious, diverse society have the right and freedom to worship, believe, many practice, and join in community with others according to their own conscience. Of course, people should also have the right to abstain from these activities such as the atheists and agnostics. Put differently, religious pluralism refers to the belief in two or more religious worldviews as being equally valid or acceptable, but more tolerance or a simple fact of religion, diversity in society where individuals can freely pursue their religious beliefs and practices. Religious pluralism involves the acceptance and respect for the beliefs and practices of other members of the society. Lastly, pluralism in politics is the recognition and formation of diversity within a political body which is sent to permit the peaceful coexistence of different interests, convictions, and lifestyles. In this vein, most political theories assume that respecting diverse political views is beneficial to the society as it promotes equality and society justice. That's all.